You've probably been curious about Expedition 33 after you've heard it winning some awards and being nominated for the big Game of the Years. It's totally not at all to do one of the characters' feats always out all the time, but let's dive right into it. Dive into Claire's obscure Expedition 33, which most people probably just say Expedition 33. Now let's go right into it. Now, Claire Expedition gameplay and combat-wise borrows heavily from the classic JRPG turn-based style of combat, games like Persona, the older Final Fantasies, all those classic older games. Now, don't let that make you avoid this game at all. Trust me when I say people who don't like that turn-based combat will probably still find this game enjoyable, especially from a story perspective. Now, gameplay-wise, without the combat, it's a lot of roaming environments. You explore a lot of these beautiful environments. You can kind of like run, dash to areas, and then there's kind of like while you're on the map, there's a lot of enemies everywhere, and if you run into them, that kind of starts the combat. If you're not familiar with that kind of classic JRPG turn-based combat, there is like an open world kind of element where there's a lot of optional areas to visit and a lot of optional bosses and stuff like that, which I really appreciate because it made me want to keep exploring every nook and cranny, especially when you unlock a new ability to access new areas. It makes me be like, oh, maybe I missed something all the way from the earlier area of the game. Let me go and check that area, and then you find a cool boss, and when you beat that boss, you unlock a new costume for all your characters, which is really nice and cool because not a lot of the time do I feel like I'm wasting my time exploring random nooks and crannies to find these really cool bosses that are exploring the world that I couldn't find earlier in the game. Now let's talk about the actual combat in the game. Like I said, it's a turn-based game, so you control a party of up to 4 characters, and each character has their turn in this initiation of combat, where it kind of uses your stats of your characters and the stats of the enemies to determine who's going first and then who is going next and so on. This is pretty standard for most turn-based strategy games if you've never played any. But what makes this a little bit more unique is it takes a lot of unique elements from older games I've played before, such as adding quick time events to attacks. That is a very nice feature that they added in this to make the turn-based combat feel a little less turn-based and or interactive. I'm not the hugest fan of quick time events, but I also don't hate them either, like a lot of people. But if you're not a big fan of it, don't worry, because the quick time events only give you bonus damage. They don't nullify damage if you miss. So let's say when you're casting Fireball with Luna, who has her dogs out, and when she's shooting Fireball, for like mid animation, it will tell you to hit A on the controller and a big prompt on the screen to do bonus damage. I felt like this made me feel a little bit more engaged in the combat than I have in several other turn-based games I've played previously. Another nice addition they added, which I've never been very good at doing in video games, is a parry block mechanism, which is basically when an enemy is attacking you, you do have this option to block to take less damage or parry and counter the damage back to the enemy. And obviously parrying is a smaller window than blocking, but it is a nice addition because it makes you feel a little bit more on the edge in that aspect. Now there is a RPG mechanism with skills and stuff like that, and obviously plenty of loot to find in the world via weapons and or even cosmetic outfits for your characters. My biggest complaint overall is this perk system that they have in this game called Pictos. And basically they're quick, easy perks you can equip on your character to give them bonuses and stuff like that. And especially mid to late game, you have quite a few of these. I would say I feel like over 100 of them. But scrolling through that whole list to equip them and unequip them, and then the fact that you can have an ungodly amount equipped depending on what build you have going on, it makes me really wish they had a loadout system. Loadout 1 has all these pictos and this weapon equipped and these set of skills assigned, or loadout 2 has all these pictos equipped, because in this game they require you to manually re-equip, and I just kind of wish they added that loadout system, please. That's the only biggest complaint I have. That, and to reset any of the skills for your characters, you have to spend a resource in game, and early on that resource isn't as widely available as it is to very, I feel like late game-ish, almost mid-late to late game. You have a decent chunk of it and you get a lot of it, but especially early on when you're experimenting with these characters and the fact that each character has their own unique play system, each character feels like its own game, and me not figuring out what skills I like with this character without being able to spend this resource on this one character to reset their skills only was a little annoying. That was probably my biggest complaint outside the picto system. That's outside that, gameplay combat wise I thought was amazing. I just didn't really like how they were lacking a loadout, and I didn't like how the skills weren't easily resettable. I've never been a big fan of the skill system not being an easy reset to test out different builds. Not to talk about the story, I really love when a game has a good story, and this game definitely has a great story. It's one of the few games I kind of wish I could just wipe my memory and re-experience the game. There's very few on that list, but this is definitely on there. Without giving too much spoilers, you are playing Gustav, who's played by Daredevil himself. And the cast is pretty stacked in this game. You got Ben Starr in it, you got Jennifer English from Baldur's Gate just the other year. And outside the amazing voice cast in this game, the plot is very mysterious, very interesting. It really hooks you in that beginning aspect of the game. Without going into any more spoilers, I'm just going to go with basically the description of the game is, and or if you've even seen the trailer for the game. But basically the idea is there's this giant monolith, and every year this lady who's sleeping underneath the monolith wakes up and lowers the number. Anyone who's above that number age-wise immediately vanishes into basically Thanos snap style dust, but a little bit more artistic because this game is a very artistic game with its graphics and design and environment. But that's the generic plot, and these expeditions are sent out to attack and stop this from happening, kill the lady underneath the monolith so that this number doesn't keep going down. And that's the basic overall plot without getting into spoilers. But if you're looking for a really good story, you should give this a try. If you're looking to convince your girlfriend to sit down and watch you play a game for several hours, Expedition 33 is it, because if she's not hooked in after the very first intro scene, then she's probably not gonna be interested. But if you could get her to that moment, she'll probably be hooked on, because that's when I was hooked on the plot. I think the voice acting is fantastic. The animations are pretty good overall, and I really was invested in the story. I do notice some of the smaller scenes, you can tell they weren't as handcrafted in the facial animations and stuff like that, while other scenes were just so beautifully well crafted with how they did some of those facial animations and just animations in general. But also, while talking about beautifully well crafted, let's talk about the graphics, the art style of this game. I feel like graphics and art style kind of intertwine with each other. Graphically, this game kind of gives me a little bit of the Unreal Engine vibe, when it comes to it. I found it very visually appealing. I know they probably used some Unreal Engine assets, but how they used it, I just was mind boggled by how beautiful they were able to craft these environments and how well done everything was. Because I would sometimes just stand there and just look and stare at the environment. I'm like, wow, this is just beautiful. This is screenshot worthy. It is a very visually pleasing game. And I think it's not really to being a super graphically intense game, but I think it's due to its art style and how they crafted these environments. And it's such a beautiful art style, especially combined with that soundtrack that they have in this game. This game is up there with video game soundtracks, in my opinion. Well crafted soundtrack. If you have not given it a try, it is great, especially considering it was, if I'm not mistaken, done by somebody they found off SoundCloud who was like a teacher, and they asked him to just help make the soundtrack for this game, and man, did he make a great soundtrack. I really hope we hear more of this guy in the future in other games. The performance, I am running a 4070 Ti and I was getting some hiccups. I get the occasional, I feel like, Unreal Engine hiccups. And there are upscalers, but like the game wasn't running always a solid 60, even running at like quality at 4K and stuff like that. I would have to run it at balanced, and even then I would get the occasional hiccup here and there. But outside the random hiccups you would get exploring the environment, outside that, they were very few in between. I just kind of wish they have released several updates since the last time I played it, so I can't speak to the state of it now. But at least when I played it originally, the performance was, I would say, decent overall. It wasn't the best. Now, to the end of my reviews. Expedition 33. Should you play it? Was it fun? Did I have fun? Because in the end of the day, this doesn't really matter about if it's an 8 out of a 10. If it's a 6 out of 10. Some of them, I've had fun with games that have been considered mediocre, or I would have considered mediocre. In the end of the day, did we have fun? And I would say yes. The story is fantastic. The gameplay was great. I just wish they had some quality of life elements to the gameplay, but outside that, I loved it. It's definitely up there, and I think it deserves the awards it's probably gonna win, and it has already won. I feel like I've probably praised this game. I probably have also said some cons about this game. No game is perfect, but you should definitely give this game a try, and you will not be disappointed. If I'm not mistaken, at least at the time of making this and at launch, this game is on Game Pass on PC and Xbox. So there's an extra area if you're a little scared of not paying that money. But in my opinion, I think the money is well worth it. And I hope you like this review series. If you like this type of videos, and or if you have any tips and or suggestions and or any games you would like to see me review, just let me know. I'm trying to pick this up back on the channel. I've just been in the process of moving. My work's been making me work overtime. I've been trying to pick up these videos again and trying to put more time into the channel than I have been, because lately I've been just only making a little bit of time to stream on the Twitch and sometimes on the YouTube VOD channel. But hopefully I can catch you next time, and hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I see you in the next one. Bye.